In your house on this Veterans Day, we're talking about at-home DNA kits. Joining us to talk a little bit further about this is Dr. Sabrina Fabi. All right, Dr. Fabi, this is one thing that used to seem impossible, really, and definitely more expensive than most people could afford. Now it's with a couple businesses, it's a couple $100. What's going on with this industry as a whole?
And so basically now we have these tests that are available direct to the consumer that people can basically buy online, costing anywhere between $100 to $1,000, and they can be basically mailed to their house, and they can do swabs in their cheeks, or sometimes even go to a particular clinic to get their blood drawn to get genetic testing to find out if they have a specific disease that they carry.
So interesting. As we look at some of the information there on your screen, I want to ask you about when you take the test. Normally you do a cheek swab. In some cases you have to do a blood draw, but the cheek swab is the one you do at home. Talk to me about the results. When are we expected to get the results back? And more importantly, are the results typically accurate, and what do they tell us?
And so that's where the dilemma lies, and that's why the FDA has actually required 23andMe to recall their product and no longer make it available to the consumer, because it's considered a medical device, and people are taking the information that they're getting from these swabs and from these genetic tests and really dictating and changing their healthcare regimen based on information that may not necessarily be accurate. And the more and more of these companies that are becoming available that are offering these tests, there's no validity sometimes to how sensitive that result is as far as its accuracy. And so we have to be careful, because if people are changing their healthcare regimen and perhaps prescribing themselves things or taking medication based on invalid results, there's a risk to that.
Yeah, certainly understandable there. You mentioned the company 23andMe, which came out a couple years ago in 2013, and then they had to recall the product because they were claiming that they were essentially a medical device. Now there's a new group called DNA for Life. You mentioned a couple of the cons. Talk to me about some of the pros, for example, Dr. Fabi, about if you decide you want to go this route and sort of learn your DNA.
Well, the pros are that if you are concerned about perhaps giving your child a particular disease, you can find out quickly with a swab whether you may be a carrier for a disease that you can potentially pass on to a child. Another thing that's interesting is that we know that certain ethnic groups are at risk for certain diseases. And so if you can basically get a swab and know that now you have a particular disease that you may be carrying, you can start doing preventative things like diet or exercise to prevent that disease from expressing itself, or at least prolonging its expression.
Yeah, you wonder if a case like this is more ignorance is bliss or knowledge is power. You could sort of maybe argue both sides. Dr. Fabi, always great to have you. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Jen.